ESPN's Field Yates dropped a 2026 NFL mock draft, so I am here to review it. Let's get right into this. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate y'all with the patience that you've been given. We have a lot of awesome content coming. I was hoping that we would end up getting a good sponsor for this episode, but we're in the middle of an approval process, and that will be coming later this week. So get excited for that because there is a lot of awesome sponsorship content coming. I'm super excited to be partnering with some awesome brands, so get excited. I was trying my best to delay as much as possible, and I don't want you guys hanging on forever while I'm trying to just add a sponsor to these videos, because this is one that I wanted to be able to kick it off with, but I'd prefer to give you guys good content rather than, kneel down to the sponsor. Number one, we have the Cleveland Browns going Arch Manning. Again, I really do not like that. I don't like when mock drafts have Arch Manning in it because it just feels like it invalidates the rest of the list. I'm not saying that's what Field Yates did. And technically, he ended up saying like there is a possibility of Arch coming out early. Like Arch himself was asked about it, and he was not definitive on the fact that he was staying. But I mean, the family is pretty adamant about him staying. It appears that just pretty much the consensus is that he is staying. So if I'm just going to be honest, might be a good idea to try to act like he's staying. But again, we're not going to throw out an entire mock draft just because we don't believe in the first pick is coming out. This is all for fun, and maybe there is a chance that Arch comes out. I highly doubt that he would if Cleveland is sitting there at number one, but it is what it is. Arch Manning, really good talent. He is my QB2 in the class. He's shown great growth even in the very little experience that he's had. I'm hoping that growth continues, and that will determine whether I feel comfortable. We have a trade, and the New York Jets trade up with the New York Giants. So this quarterback, I guess, is going to be playing at East Rutherford, regardless of what team was going to take him here. But, with such a hard schedule, there is a chance the Giants are going to have a pretty bad pick, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be necessarily a pretty bad team. I will say for Joe Shane, Brian Dable, this is the best case scenario for them, apart from having the easiest schedule, because I don't think the Giants are necessarily built to be legitimate contenders. And I think that's what would be required for Dable and Shane to keep their job. However, I do believe that, this is the perfect excuse, having a very, very difficult schedule. So maybe they'll end up keeping Jackson Dart, organization that brought him in. And, we'll see how that would end up going. But the New York Jets trade up for LaNorris Sellers, who I have as the best player in the entire class. Now, I would end up saying, you guys see the color differential if you guys are not new. And if you guys are wondering, I am wearing a Jay Jettis LSU jersey. I ended up going on the Draft Professor. Shout out to them for having me. I appreciate the love and support that they've shown for the show. But had to point that out there. But regardless, if you guys are new to the show, then you guys will understand that LaNorris is still my top graded player. If you are not new, you'll be like, why is the color changed? And that's because I dropped his grade a little bit. I felt after watching, someone who I've gotten the pleasure to be able to see, at least talk to a little bit, and got to know his agent as well. Shout out to Niley. But, when I ended up watching Joe Milton in person, I was like, really understanding how important timing is in terms of being in rhythm, being able to throw the ball at the right time. So no disrespect to Joe. It was the second preseason game of the year, and obviously maybe some nerves, and, he ended up doing better in week 3. So, that was good to see that progression there. But, sitting there watching it with my eyes, I really did feel how palpable it is to just really understand the importance of timing. And LaNorris's biggest issue is throwing on time. Everything else, in my opinion, I think he does a really solid job at, and he's super young, carries in some pretty bad tendencies from high school, which when you are built like Superman and have a cannon of an arm, probably is going to follow you into college. And it was his first year starting. I thought he did a great job rising up in the biggest moments against the biggest teams. And I'm super excited to see him continue to grow and develop. I think the Giants would be smart to move down and take advantage of a team that gets excited for the move up. I think this would be mutually beneficial. And then we have another trade. We have the Saints moving up with the Titans, which I think actually would be smart for the Titans. We'll see how this ends up turning out for the Saints. But if they move up and select Cade Klubnik, you're getting yourself a really solid high floor quarterback. I don't have that much higher of a grade on Klubnik, like that notably higher of a grade on Klubnik. based on last year specifically than I do on Shuck, but I have seen notable steps from Cade Klubnik year over year, and I love seeing that progression. I only expect that to be the same this year. For me, I'm not going to jump the gun and immediately project him to where I think he should be. I'm going to admit where he is now and then talk to you guys about where I think I want him to be and where I think he should be, which it should be in this range. I think he'll end up taking one more tier jump, which, based on quarterback value that I have, will probably place him right here into the top 15 for me, which is really high for quarterbacks because I personally believe that the quarterback position is extremely overvalued. Like, just in terms of rookies, not in terms of like actual quality starters. But regardless, Cade Klubnik, I think he's going to be winning a national championship this year, unless Clemson's secondary ends up being an issue. Fingers crossed that's not the case. But the Saints getting their star quarterback is not a bad idea. We'll just see if it ends up working out for them. At number 4, we have the New York Giants via that trade back, selecting Peter Woods. How? Like, I mean, I'm going to be honest. You built, again, I mean, it's already arguably the best defensive line in the whole entire, I was about to say the whole country as we're talking about NCAA, but in the whole entire league, you're just going to make it better with Peter Woods. I mean, I guess you could do that, but if I'm going to be honest, I'm going after Jordyn Tyson here, getting another X next to Malik Neighbors and just overloading the firepower, or going after an offensive tackle here. Those would be the routes I go. If you go Peter Woods, it just really would depend on who is there in round number 2, because I do think that offensive line position, especially the right tackle position, is pretty damn weak in this class. And there are some guys at the top. For me specifically, I'm a huge fan of Spencer Fano, somebody who I think could end up filling that role really, really well for the value. But Peter Woods, I mean, he's an absolute freak. I'm not going to complain about that. At number 5, the Titans have moved down and select Caleb Downs. I personally think this is going to be a really fun duo if this does come to fruition. You end up getting Caleb Downs, and then you also have a growing Kevin Winston who will be coming back from injury. So fingers crossed, Winston gets some good development. Caleb Downs, I got a hiccup at best player in the class outside of LaNorris, in my opinion, because I just think LaNorris is an absolute superstar. But again, that's not taken from Caleb Downs. He is amazing. So, number 6, we have the Carolina Panthers going Keldric Faulk, edge rusher out of Auburn. I don't think this is going to be necessary. They drafted multiple edge rushers this past year. I know that I believe there's a punctured lung for Nick Scorton. I'm hoping for a fast and safe recovery for him and a safe re-entry into the league and back to football. Obviously, that's very scary. They thought it was better than it was. It ended up being worse. And so, fingers crossed, he makes a really quick and really healthy recovery and then stays healthy. But on top of that, Princely Umamielen, I just think that they've invested enough into the edge position where Keldric Faulk, who I love, just doesn't move the needle enough for me to say he's worth the number 6 pick in the first place. And then when you look at Carolina having those young edge rushers, I don't see the need. If you want to go after, I mean, shoot, you ended up extending Moton as well. So I was like, that was one of the looming questions, is how is that right tackle position going to be? But I would end up still looking at the defensive interior here with Christian Miller. It's pretty ballsy, but I think that dude's going to be a superstar this year. If you want to go crazy, Dylan Thieneman, but I don't think safety should be a position you target this high. I'm just looking at my board, and to be fair, it's not very Carolina Panther friendly. So I understand where you might be like, just go after somebody who's at a position of need or a position of potential need, or one that you could always continue to upgrade. You know what? This is actually a really shitty class for the Panthers. It really is you have to go after, Caleb Downs or kind of bust. Definitely one of the spots where I'd recommend trying to trade back if you can. The Raiders then go Spencer Fano at 7. Value-wise, I love Spencer Fano at 7. But I'm just I don't know if the Raiders are the type of team to say the reason we're at 7 is because of our right tackle situation. Let's just be real. I don't think that. But if they do end up diagnosing, they look back and they analyze and they diagnose that the right tackle was the primary issue or a primary issue, by all means, again, it's a pretty weak tackle class. Ended up being, again, just shout out to the draft professors, ended up being on their show tonight. It's a midnight for me. I know I have to get up at work at 6 hours, but it is what it is. I love you guys and I want you guys to get good content. But we were just talking about, like, why is everybody saying all these guys should be moving into guard? And it's like, whenever you hear like so many offensive tackles being said, like, oh, maybe they can kick into guard, it's probably the sign it's a shitty tackle class. And I hate to say it, that's kind of what it is. So, really good at the top, though. If you do see that there's a probable or like a high chance that you're going to be upgrading, do not miss out on it. Number 8, we got the Patriots going TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson. Edge rusher absolutely is a need for them. You know, Caleb on Chason right now is going to be one of their starters, and he is on a 1-year deal. We'll see if they end up trying to move Keon White, who just got like pushed down beneath Caleb on, but they still will then have Keon White on a 1-year deal. So TJ Parker absolutely could be the option. My biggest issue with TJ is the IQ. I don't think he necessarily has the football IQ that people want to say he does. At the same time, he is so young that football IQ is something that should be coming to him as he gains more experience, which is what happens when you get to play a full another year. So fingers crossed he ends up getting to this point. Right now, I don't believe so, but if he does, I do think he's a good fit for New England. Number 9, we have the Rams going Sam Leavitt, quarterback out of Arizona State. It's funny because Sam Leavitt's fun to watch, really good athlete, has a lively arm, has some big splash plays. So that's a foundation you're looking for, especially if you're trying to develop a quarterback. Here's my big issue with Sam Leavitt. And it's surprising that people haven't brought this up very often as a criticism, but for Sam, it's like we're talking shit about Shedeur Sanders taking 10, 12, 15-yard drops and then making it impossible for his tackles. Sam Leavitt's the exact same way. He's just a better athlete, so it looks less damaging when he just runs and escapes from everyone versus like Shedeur ending up just getting tracked down like it's nothing. Sam will make it more difficult for the defense, but he is still making it very difficult for the offense, in my opinion. So I do have my concerns there with Leavitt. I do think he has a sky-high ceiling, but in terms of playing the game at the NFL level, I do think there is a lot of room and maturity that is needed. So a lot of room to grow, a lot of maturity that is needed. Number 10, we have the Seattle Seahawks going Anthony Hill Jr., linebacker out of Texas. Not a big Anthony Hill guy, personally. I think he's a good player, but first off, 237, he looks like he's 227. He plays like it too. Doesn't necessarily have the physicality that I'm looking for. I've already fully evaluated him, and I think he'll end up probably being my linebacker 4 or 5. He's a solid linebacker, but it's just at number 10, you got to have something special. Some people are trying to talk about Jahad Campbell comps. I don't see that, and you guys know me. I was a super fan of Jahad Campbell, and I'm just not necessarily of Anthony Hill. At number 11, we got the Colts going Drew Allar, quarterback out of Penn State. My only concern with Drew is that he's still developing the mechanics. This is a team in the Colts that have had a lot of issues with a quarterback that had some issues, some injury setbacks, granted, but never really got to fully mature in those mechanics. But if Drew Allar can continue progressing the way similar to Klubnik that he has, then he is well worth that number 11 pick. At number 12, we have the Browns going Austin Barber, tackle out of Florida. He has left and right tackle versatility, so it just depends on how comfortable you feel with the players that you're starting at left versus right. I personally think he's a guard. That's my hot take. I do not just watch the Tennessee game. You got to understand why players fail. It's so fun to get excited about guys, and it sucks being more on the pessimistic side of any player. I mean, hell, I'll admit it. I was wrong about Jackson Dart so far. Granted, the last New York Giant quarterback they drafted high ended up having a really good preseason before being Daniel Jones. But with Austin Barber specifically, I will just say I watched that game versus Tennessee, and this guy could not handle a speed rusher to save his life. And it scares the shit out of me because not only are these edge rushers in the NFL as fast as Joshua Joseph, they're as big as Myles Garrett. You're looking at guys who are built like true seasoned men versus, you're talking about college kids who are still developing. And if you can't handle the kids in college, especially the ones who have speed, it's going to be very difficult to handle the power that comes with it when the guys at the NFL level are much better than any of the guys that you've faced so far in college. And I know that that's a testament to all of these players, but that's why so few get to truly start. 64 starting tackles on planet Earth, right? it's not like we're going to find 30 of them in this class. Number 13, though, we have the Dallas Cowboys going Caleb Banks. A defensive interior is definitely a position that could end up being upgraded. Caleb Banks has 35-inch arms measured by Florida, and that's scary. I just think he is extremely underdeveloped for how much experience he has. That would scare the shit out of me. But Caleb Banks could end up being awesome. He has those reps where you're like, holy Toledo. But again, very raw for how experienced he is. Number 14 with the Cardinals going Francis Mauigoa, tackle out of Miami. This is the second offensive tackle taken so far in this draft that I think is a guard. But Francis is my top 30. I think CC is a very solid player. My issue is he loses the range battle a lot, and he also does not have a really strong he doesn't have a great ability of protecting his outside shoulder. He gives it up a little bit more than I feel comfortable with. I think a lot of his issues would be mitigated at guard. So I think you could end up being in a situation where you feel fine with Francis being at either position, but I would end up saying that he is not worth the number 14 pick as a tackle. That's just my opinion at the moment. Like, Francis Mauigoa, I had a much higher opinion of him, and it led me to believe more in Antoine Powell-Ryland than maybe I should. Because I was thinking, like, dude, I've seen some CC Mauigoa. He's like going to be a top 5 pick, and then look what Antoine Powell-Ryland's doing to him. Yeah, in retrospect, maybe I overvalued those reps. At 15, though, for the Miami Dolphins to go Avieon Terrell, corner out of Clemson. Corner is a position they need. I don't think Avion's the scheme fit that you necessarily are looking for. Jermod McCoy is a little bit more like that, but there are corners down the board in this class. Like if you want to in round 2, round 3, depending if he fixes the PI issues or the holding issues as well. Davison Igbinosun, that's going to be a little bit more in the Weaver profile, but I do really want Anthony Weaver to stay. Like I really hope he does. But corner is an easy pick for him. I just personally think there are better fits. 16, the Steelers go Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback out of LSU. I'm just hoping that it ends up working out. Again, busts happen at the quarterback position. And so you just have to be a little bit more worried or a little bit more nitpicky when it comes to your quarterbacks. And he is 204 pounds. He is not the biggest guy on planet Earth. That is a big issue when you are going to be taking hits. The Steelers do not have a certified left tackle. I love Broderick Jones for what he is, but what he is not the player that we thought he was. And so Garrett Nussmeier, I just have my concerns there. I would like to see Fernando Mendoza in that equation. I do think that would be a better choice, but I do like the fact that at least Field mentioned it. 17, the Bears go Jermod McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. Right now he's doing personal drills, so not like team drills, but coming back from an ACL that quickly is pretty damn awesome to see. Good to see that resilience. Hopefully the knee's actually healed and he's not pushing it too early. But I would say the Bears, I would not be targeting Jermod McCoy this early. I will say it's possible to upgrade, but I don't think Jermod would be, in my opinion, the guy who I would try to target. At 18, we got the Vikings going Anto Saka, edge out of Northwestern. Very little production. Crazy motor. Good to see, but one of those players that I have on a must-watch list and get up to date. I will say the Minnesota Vikings, I do not see being a team that needs to draft Anto Saka this early. There are other areas that definitely need more attention. At 19, we have the Green Bay Packers going Matayo Uiagalelei, edge rush out of Oregon. Just very underwhelming. Broshmo said it best. Shout out to him. He ended up saying a lot of cleanup sacks. The production, not necessarily very translatable, and we'll see if it ends up working this year. But big frame, good technique. Just, I think it's severely overrated based on the statistics more than anything else. At number 20, we have the Denver Broncos going Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. Especially with the departure and very smart departure of Devon Vele, I do see some reps that Jordyn Tyson can instantly step in and play the identical role that Vele could. But Jordyn Tyson has the ceiling to play so much more. Again, doesn't have the physical profile that Vele did. If I'm not mistaken, I thought Vele was taller. But maybe the number that is higher than 2, I thought it might have been 6'5", 6'6", might be of just his age when he came into the league at 25 or 26 years old. Jordyn Tyson's just so good, though. Polished route runner, just really damn dominant. Someone who I have a lot of faith in. At 21, we have the Texans going Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame. Definitely think that running back should be on their radar. If Jeremiah Love is there at 21, I think that's a smart move. At 22, we have the Buccaneers going Dennis Sutton, edge rusher out of Penn State. I would just say go after the lighter builds of the edge rushers. First off, Denis is nowhere close, in my opinion, to Ruben Bain, nor is he LT Overton. But at the same time, I will toss in there that the Buccaneers were the first team to sign somebody with the free agent period, and that first player was Hassan Reddick, who is a completely different build than Dennis Sutton. It shows that they are at least still valuing someone of a little bit of a lighter build and hoping probably that David Walker can end up being the bigger edge rusher in terms of size, or at least weight. At number 23, we have the Niners going Jude Bowry, left tackle out of Boston College. I did not think Jude Bowry was a first-round tackle, but at the same time, I love seeing some new names being tossed into here. I do think tackle should be up at the top of the needs list for the 49ers. 24, we have the Bengals going Kadyn Proctor, tackle out of Alabama. I guess we're going to develop him and sit him for a year. If you're sitting there at 24, it's first off pretty obvious. I mean, the Bengals are going to need an edge rusher. Getting a 1-year, $30 million restructure there for your top tier edge rusher, Trey Hendrickson. You're going to need to have another edge rusher. But on top of that, that means your team is going to drop off in production. It depends. Are you going to be eating a year of production or a year to just develop Kadyn Proctor underneath Brown? Because that's kind of what you're saying here. If you lose Trey Hendrickson and your first round pick isn't going to be playing, there's going to be some issues. But Proctor needs that extra year of development. I just prefer for him to use it at Alabama. At number 25, we have the Washington Commanders going Germie Bernard, wide receiver out of Alabama. Terry McLaurin just signed his contract. This was made before that. However, there still is a need for long-term wide receiver too. We'll see if Jalen Lane can do that, but his return specialist ability is really what got him drafted so high. Germie Bernard is just a rock-solid wide receiver 2/3. This would end up being a pretty damn reliable weapon for the long haul, and I actually don't mind it. It's just a little bit early for me for Germie, but just a really solid player. At number 26, we have the Chargers going Chandler Rivers, cornerback out of Duke. Some official numbers, if I'm not mistaken, ended up having Chandler Rivers at 5'8". So I'll just put that out there, but he is small as all get out, even with the non-official figures at 5'10", 185. He's just a small dude. And so you'll be using him at the nickel. And if I'm going to be honest, I just personally think the Chargers do not need to value corner this early, especially with the other issues and the guys who are available. You're talking about Ruben Bain. It's kind of like, I'm just going to point back out to him, LT Overton. At 27, we got the Rams going Daylen Everette, cornerback out of Georgia. Again, kind of two players I've been a little bit lower on is Leavitt and Everett, who, funnily enough, that rhymes. But both players drafted to the Rams in this mock draft. Daylen's a high floor player, but I think he's just perfect as an early day 3 high floor corner that you want as your corner 4/5. That's just where my head's at. I don't think he's a good athlete. And maybe I'm even overvaluing him at cornerback 4. 28, you got the Ravens going A.J. Harris, cornerback out of Penn State. I do think the boundary corner situation could end up being wide open with Jair Alexander, on that 1 year. And so certainly somebody who is a balanced corner. I just think that he's going to be a little bit more of that round 2 to 3 territory for me. Like, I just haven't felt the love for A.J. Harris that maybe some other people have. At 29, you got the Lions going Sonny Styles, linebacker of The Ohio State University. He is my linebacker 1 at the moment, and that is, I think, 6 linebackers in, and taking those 6 are the top guys. But Sonny Styles is a good linebacker. I do think that this linebacker class is a lot of potential, not necessarily a lot of promise. So we'll see how they develop over the next year. But Sonny Styles, he does have the potential to be the best, and especially at his frame, I think he can end up being a really solid linebacker. 30, we have the Chiefs going Isaiah World, tackle out of Oregon. I mean, I assume, they brought in Jalen Moore. Cool. I guess, I don't know who they're moving to right tackle. I'm just going to put that out there because Josh Simmons ended up showing that he's going to be the long-term left tackle. Again, did they end up taking Fano yet? I don't think they did. If they did, then perfectly happy with that. But I don't remember. I remember just trying to recommend Fano. Fano would be great here. If you want to go right tackle, go right tackle. Like, I just don't. I don't trust someone who has experience at right tackle at Nevada. And again, with Josh Simmons, it was a bonus, but I don't want to put him in that situation just because he played right tackle at San Diego State. I don't know. But hey, it's the best player available. If you think that he can play right tackle, go for it. Eagles go Blake Miller here at 31. Again, we're here to have a good time, talk about it. Talk about the picks themselves. First off, I want to say Field Yates has been an extremely, extremely friendly person when I've been able to talk with him in person. So shout out to him for being extremely humble, extremely chill. So in no way do I have a vendetta against Field. I will just say Blake Miller has no place in the first round. Watch his game versus Texas. This guy was absolutely exposed. And then for the Philadelphia Eagles, there's just so many other players that I just think they're trying to work on. Guard in like round 3 is maybe where I would try to look at for the offensive line. I don't think Blake Miller is first round quality. And that sucks because I really wanted him to be first round quality. But the Eagles, they have tight end issues. They have boundary corner 2 issues. That's like where the majority of the headache is. And then talk about defensive interior at the moment too. You have Christian Miller, who you can end up bringing in to replace Moro Ojomo. Just a lot of really good value, and I think it was a big miss to go after Blake Miller. At number 32, we got the Bills going Jacoby Lane, and I'm just going to be real. It's just very similar to what I'm talking about here with Blake Miller. Like, Jacoby Lane doesn't accomplish anything. Like, Jacoby Lane, at his best, is Keon Coleman. Like, at his very best. And I don't think he's remotely close. Now, granted, I know that guys like Jordan Reed really like him. So, again, this is more of a preference thing. But I will say, if you're talking about some good wide receiver talent for the Bills, let's talk about some guys who can press it down the field. Chris Bell, 6'2", 220. I mean, we're going to talk about Noah Thomas, 6'5", 200 pounds. Chase Roberts has some deep threat ability. I'm not going to be going that far with him. But, I mean, there's certainly that chance there. Jaden Greathouse, no. CJ Daniels is very possible. But the name I wanted to actually bring up here is Antonio Williams. He just had some drop issues this past year. If he fixes those, he's going to be in my top 20, most likely. He's a really balanced receiver that I could end up seeing being the deep threat the Bills are looking for. I just don't understand the Jacoby Lane part because it kind of feels like a hybrid of Keon Coleman and Palmer. Like, it doesn't feel like it accomplishes anything. But that's going to be the video. Thank you again for watching and showing the love you always do. And I'll catch you later. Peace.